السلام علیکم بینندگان عزیز. امیدوار هستم که در هر نقطه دنیا باشین خوش و آرام باشین. امروز در برنامه ما دکتر زهره جان سعید داریم و بسیار خوش هستیم. جای افتخار است که همراه ما هسته. یک کتاب نویس و شاعر بسیار خوب ما هسته و امروز راجع به بسیار یک چیز جالب صحبت میکنیم. چون ماه بلک هیستوری مانت است، میخواستیم که راجع به لانگستون هیوز صحبت کنیم. Good afternoon, everybody. I hope that wherever in the world you are happy and healthy and well. We have an incredible guest here today. Her name is Dr. Zohra Saed, and we are honored to have her in our presence today. We are having a show on Black History Month, and we would like to discuss some of Zohra Jan's work on Langston Hughes. Without further ado, I will be reading her biography. Zohra Saed is a Brooklyn-based writer. She's the co-editor of One Story, 30 Stories, an anthology of contemporary Afghan American literature, editor of Langston Hughes, poems, photos, and notebooks from Turkestan, and Lost and Found, the CUNY Poetics Documents Initiative, and Woman. Her essays on the Central Asian diaspora have appeared in Eating Asian American and the Asian American Literary Review. Without further ado, we have Zohra Jan. Zohra Jan, could you tell us a little bit about yourself? اگر امکاناتش باشه یکم راجع به خود صحبت کنیم.
سلام، زهره هستم. در افغانستان تولد شدیم، در جلال آباد. ازبکیم خوبتر است از فارسی، ببخشین. من فامیلم از جلاواتم است. امریکا دا کتب بگم است. شد دا پی اچ دی موقع من همشو ازبک تلی بلم ترجمه قگم من شو بابام بلم قصه‌lar و شاعرlar که لانگستون هیوز افغانستان بارمگن بس ازبکستان و ترکمنستان بارگن وقت ده یازگنده اشونه ترجمه قگم است و ایست که ترکستان لیک تل دیده اشونه ترجمه قلال لیک اول ترجمه بو مگنه ده اشونه ترجمه قگنه مزگه کتاب یازدم جو چاپ بولی ابتخاطر.
Wonderful. And of course, if you wanted to share that in English too, that would be great.
I said I was born in Jalalabad in Afghanistan. Our family is from there, although we speak Uzbek. And I'm stronger in Uzbek than Farsi. Although for the book, for the Langston Hughes chapbook, and then for the book I'm working on now, that's the language we needed, my father and I needed to translate the poems and the notes that Hughes had collected on his trip from 1932 to 33.
That's incredible. And actually, since my life at the moment revolves around translation, interpretation, and language, one of my favorite areas to study and to read about, I think that that's incredibly fascinating and really underrated. We don't hear about this enough. And that's really why I wanted to bring attention to it today. چون ترجمانی بسیار یک چیز مهم است برای من شخص در زندگی من. بسیار لیسان که هست یک چیز بسیار مهم است که مردم یک جای میسازه و مخصوصا ترجمانی که میشه امکاناتش واز میشه که همه مردم میتونن که یک چیز را بفهمن در یک لفظ یا در یک لیسان. Again, the importance of words and being able to connect to people and bridge the differences. That's the beauty of translation and interpretation. So since it is Black History Month, I would like to acknowledge that it's really important for us to understand as the Afghan American community that we belong to, that the Black history in this nation has kind of set a foundation for us as Muslims. And in addition, as immigrants that live in the US, that the first point that I wanted to touch on, I know personally, being born and raised in this country, the first experience that made me feel proud, even before being Afghan, And even really before I was able to kind of accept and be proud of that identity was through the Black experience. I know that when I was in junior high school and when I was in high school, I always felt really empowered when I read Black literature. When I read about Malcolm X, I remember I was like 11 or 12 years old and I read the autobiography of Malcolm X. I think I read it like 3 times. And each time I read it, I got something different from it. And there was this pride instilled in us that, there is a community out here that's set a foundation, particularly with regards to Islam. This is the first background that's actually given us a voice with our religion. Despite whatever sect it is, it's given us that platform. And I think it's something that doesn't get discussed enough in the Afghan American community. And it needs to. And I know that on previous shows, I had one with just Yusuf John Azam, and we discussed this when we were talking about the Electoral College, that, the basis of this country and the foundational elements of it really lie within African American history. So first and foremost, to acknowledge that بسیار مهم است که ما چون افغان هستیم که در امریکا زندگی میکنیم، بسیار مهم است که متوجه شویم که افریقایی امریکایی ها که در این مملکت بودن و اولین بار بود که دین ما اسلام نشان داده شده در این مملکت. و همچنان وقتی که خرد بودم همیشه آروبیوگرافی مالکوم اکس میخواندم، زیاد علاقمندش بودم برای که یک کنکشن احساس میکردم. And so that's really why I was really interested. And I did see your TED Talks the other day, and I got really excited when I learned so much that I didn't know about the link between Langston Hughes and Central Asia. Um, and addition, we are also immigrants that live in the United States, and we are faced with this issue of white supremacy, and this is not closed off only to us. It's important to understand that there are so many different communities and marginalized communities in this country that face this issue, and particularly the African American community. So بسیار مهم بود که میخواستم براتون بگویم که همین بسیار مهم است که مخصوصا سفید پوستان که هستن یک مشکلات بسیار خاص ساختن برای اول برای سیاه و بعد از او برای ما مردمی که مهاجر هستیم که آستاستا آمدیم امریکا. It's not, there's a very very strong link there. I'm sure that you would agree, Zohra John.
Can I jump in now?
Yeah, please.
This is great. This is such a great introduction to the Black American experience and the connection between immigration. I do think that there are a lot of privileges that immigrants have that the African American community has not had, and that's because we're basically immigration came as a result of not allowing desegregation to fully take into effect. So, in a sense, being an immigrant is taking away, in a sense, the progress of African Americans, and that's something that we should always acknowledge and face. And as for identity, I think that growing up, of course, there's Muhammad Ali, who in 2002 went to Afghanistan as well and was there to support the children. And of course, Muhammad Ali has become sort of an icon, the Islamic icon for us. And Malcolm X, of course, especially when he performed his Hajj. Even the film Roots, which was so important, even I remember in Saudi Arabia, we were watching it just to connect on the Black experience and the Black Muslim experience. But I did grow up in a predominantly white neighborhood, and I remember when I was younger, my dad was worried that the only kind of Americans we were seeing were white, and so we would go to the He had found one, and this is mainly because my dad was always reaching out, and he was influenced by Muhammad Ali and Malcolm X, and he was influenced by these stories that he had read, and these were stories that were also in Afghanistan as well, translated into Farsi. Um, so we went into a black Muslim mosque as a way to, for my father to feel like he was really bringing us into America. And I think that was really important for me because, for the most part, I remember growing up, the model to look at was white Americans, and then the model to stay away from was black Americans, and that was the danger of it. Even though many immigrants work in poor black neighborhoods, there was always that, that there's something different about us. So I hope that there is a way to um, break that kind of dynamic, and I think that's happening more after the BLM movement. Um, so for me, when I was growing up, and I think it's because my dad was very careful about teaching us different parts of America and different parts of Islam. Yeah, the significance of Bilal being the voice of Islam, right? I think that that emphasis really transformed me, and my mentors transformed me because throughout school, it was in college, it was my black professors who were my mentors and understood the experience of Afghan Americans because they had gone through this. Yeah, and then definitely you learn racial hierarchies and um, a white privilege from African American studies. That's where it starts. Absolutely.
ترجمة میکنیم به ساعت ازبکیت مقبول است.
Um, بالنسبة كتب وجندك بروكلين ده community'miz يعني تركستان أنجمن ده كتب لك بس أكثر آقلارда tarafıda oturganmiz. Babam istedi kichikligimizda ki biz tushunaylik Malcolm X'ni qissasini, Muhammad Ali'ni qissasini shularda katta bo'lib o'qigan edi. Babam dunyoni ko'rgan, har yerga borgan edi, bilar edi. Tafriqani ham istardi ki biz bilaylik nima musulmoni که musulmoni shu ki hamma toifani bir ko'rsa, hamma toifa bilan yaqinlashsa. عشان چون بارود قرا مسجدga bir Malcolm X masjidlari bor Nyu-Yorkda ashadga borgan edi ki biz kichikligimizdan ko'raylik musulmonlik har toifa bilan ittifoqlik bo'lgani.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Zohra John. Absolutely. You know, you brought me back to this memory of when I was little. My dad had a business partner in Harlem, and we went to go visit him. It was just a casual weekend. This is how we spent time with him when he was working. And he's like, "We're going to go to the location in Harlem," and we met up with his partner, and he actually took us on a tour to the Malcolm X Masjid, and he showed us around in this area. I was really young. I must have been at least 7 or 8, but it's such a vivid memory, and it was so exciting to see where this history had taken place. And I agree that I know Afghans say Muhammad Ali Kili, right? Like Cassius Clay, he's such an important figure of pride for us in our community, amongst others. So thank you so much for making that really important link that we cannot take away from that experience, and that I really admire your dad for being very strategic and saying, and as you were saying it, I started to think about my own childhood and wondering if my parents were doing the same thing and I just didn't realize it, because we also lived in a predominantly Italian neighborhood, white neighborhood, and but every weekend we were in Brooklyn, we were in the city. There was something going on to help diversify our knowledge and our background, especially when it came to Islam. So thank you for bringing that really important point forward. So now, Zurajan, we would, recently you did an interview on TED Talks CUNY on the contributions of Langston Hughes. So we out here in the audience are really curious. Tell us a little bit about who Langston Hughes was. How did he contribute to Asian literature and some of your work?
Langston Hughes was in Central Asia in the 1930s. He's mostly known as being a Harlem Renaissance poet, and he's written a lot of really great plays and poetry, and he was a librettist. So there's a variety of things that he was able to do in his lifetime. But this trip is not really well known. So he went to uh, what was then St. Petersburg, which was then Leningrad, and then from there went down to, was the first actually to go down into Soviet Central Asia, which biz bilamiz Turkistan deymiz. O tarafta avval Rusi Turkistan Nikolay da qo'lida edi, so Rusi Turkiston edi. Keyin Central Asia deb ot qo'yishdi, keyin O'zbekiston, Turkmaniston, Qozog'iston shu joylarda alohida qilishdi kommunist vaqtida. So during the Soviet era, what you had was Turkestan was split into different areas: Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan. So that's where you have the break of everything. Hughes went to newly formed Uzbekistan, and for me that was important because, and interesting, I saw this photo. Online that was Hughes with a few Central Asian poets, and they just said the poets had been killed, and that's it. And there wasn't much of a story afterwards. So I followed the archives, followed the story, and found out so much more. The important connection is that my great uncle fled from Uzbekistan at the time. Wali برادر پدرکلانم والی تاشکند بود، باز طرف امو وقتا چی میگن نشنالیست ترکستان طرف بودن، باز فامیلشان کشتن، کل فامیلش کشتن. باز از اونجا he fled, گریخت I think, right? قاچتı Afganistan, اشیو تاشکندتن قاچ کنده، فامیلini همسini öldürgenede. Kente ülkesine qutqazib qochishgan edi ana shu Qozog'istondan keyin China, illa Chinagacha yetgan edi. So he fled from Tashkent around 19 between 1920s to mid 1920s to like early 30s. We're not sure entirely when. And he fled to Illa, China that way. And my grandfather also fled, getting a message that the entire family was massacred. So that's the historic moment that we draw our lineage from. باز پدرکلانم 18 ساله بود افغانستان آمده بود وقتا وقت مهاجر بود از ترکستان. So there's a lot of Afghans now whose families were muhajir at the time, late 20s, 30s time period, during the time of Aman Khan and afterwards as well.
Wow,
So that's the work.
that's so incredible. So, assuming that this is very personal for you, this research and this journey that you decided to take on was because this was a very personal um, situation that happened, and I'm so sorry for that massacre. It's interesting because when you talk to um, Afghans from different areas of Afghanistan, there is this underlying theme of it's like a familial massacre. It's not just it's this group of people who are murdered essentially, and then there's all these question marks. I know that I hear it during different eras of the war, whether it was during the Mujahids, whether it was during the Taliban, just these disappearances. And I feel like from a psychological lens, and it's very difficult to have closure, with any type of grief or loss or death, but specifically when it comes to unknown, like prisoners of war or people that are missing. It definitely has a different type of psychological effect and PTSD of sorts to family members. از نگاه روانی وقتی که یک قوم یا یک فامیل مخصوصا در افغانستان قتل میشن بسیار یک تاثیر منفی داره و ببینین که در وقت مجاهدمی شده که مردم شهید شدن یا در وقت دوره طالبا فامیلا رو ببینین و هیچ کس نمیفهمه که کجا هستن، دفعتا گم میشن. Um, and so I'm very sorry that your family had to go through that, such as many, many families, including my own, who've had these type of massacres where it's been brothers or male family heirs or members. Very, very tragic. Only one psychological element that Afghans have to experience and go through. Zora
Yeah.
John, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Then in Afghanistan, in Jalalabad, our family, the remaining family who had fled to Afghanistan, were killed there. So we have a very small family because of that. During the Soviet-Afghan wars, they were killed. So
That is incredibly disheartening.
mhm.
It's so sad that your family had to go through that. And I'm so sorry. بسیاری از جایی جگرخونی است که باید فامیل شما را تیر کردین. Jodaja, do you have any visual visuals that you wanted to share with us? Any pictures?
Yeah, sure. I think that would be nice. Do you want
Sure.
me to share my screen?
Yeah, I'm gonna make you co-host so you
Okay.
can do that.
Um, just
Yes, I think you can do it now.
okay. Let me show you. Um, let's see. This photo, this is the photo that I found first online. It was just in part of an article. So these were, of course, these papers are known to everyone, but the translations hadn't happened, and finding out which writer was who was not found yet. So here's Langston Hughes. ارتدى Langston Hughes وتربته متى وتعرف ده قرغز شاعر بار بتى أوزبك شاعر بار غافر غلام قرغز شاعر علي تقم باياف و وقت ده علي تقم چوغله شاله کیکلاف بو ترکمن نویسنده the writers around him, though people didn't name him at the time, except for the Uzbek poet Ghaffar Ghulam next to him, I found out later was Ali Toqimbayov, a Kyrgyz poet, and a Turkmen poet, Shale Kekalov, and then everyone else, as you can see, were Russian writers who had been also a Russian or um, Eastern European poets who were there to start this. So this is the photo that started the search for me and led me to the Yale University Library and had me do the research. So I found this photo. I'm going to show you some others. This is at the workshop that Langston Hughes ran. So the Uzbekistan the factory Langston Hughes درس میداد شاعری شعر نوشته کردن درس میداد ببخشید اینی عکس لنگستون هیوز ترکمن شاعر یک شاعر روسی آری آستریان یک آستریان شاعره نویسنده است آرثر کسلر این ترکمنستان بود در اشقاباد
Okay.
1933 اینی
Mhm.
یک شاعر ازبک شاعر یافتم یادم در 1938 کشته شده بود در وقت ستالین به خاطر که درباره ترکستان نشته میکرد کت کل فامیلش کشته شده بود. And here's Langston Hughes, the Uzbek poet Karim Ahmadi. Here's another photo, Langston Hughes, and Karim Ahmadi is wearing a chapan. The Tashkent, January 1933. این شاعر یک 9 صفحه شعر نوشته کرده بود به لنگستون هیوز که لنگستون هیوز کمک کنه که چی پرابلم های Uzbek وقت. This is the contract in Uzbek,
Wow.
Latinized Uzbek. So that's at the, at Langston Hughes. Langston Hughes'ga 2000 pul beribdi. So 2000
Mm.
something, whatever it was. And here is Langston Hughes with, I think this is Richard Powers, who was it was an agriculturalist there, and this is in Uzbekistan. Stalin, during Stalin's time, there were um, African American agriculturalists and engineers who had come to build the cotton industry. Dabore Pachta, kar می‌کردن. Um, the 5-year plan under Stalin was all about cotton production.
Great.
Yeah, so these are the photos. Should I stop sharing?
No, no.
Yeah.
Actually, so John, so can you tell us a little bit more about the 5-year plan and what were some of the atrocities that occurred? I know that I read about this as well, that you were saying that a lot of things were erased, right?
Yeah, so the 5-year plan was to be compete and be sort of the main cotton producer in the world, and they considered cotton white gold. So they brought in workers, scientists, and agriculturalists and engineers from Tuskegee and
Mhm.
Virginia Tech. These are black universities. So they came and they supported, but then they erased so they developed a mix of cotton, which merged American cotton and Egyptian cotton together. And they they developed a cotton strain that worked in Central Asia. But the 5-year plan meant famine, starvation, that fields were only used for cotton rather than wheat. So وقتی açarchilik kirdi Türkistan'da عشان همه yerler همه yerde paxta tuzatishga ishlatuvdi ovqatga emas. So the lands were used for cotton production, not food production, and that was what led to the starvation, especially in Kazakhstan and Ukraine as well, but mostly Central Asia. Um, the memory of African Americans who had developed the cities, the roads, were all erased probably after 1938, and you had in its place images of Uzbek, Turkmen, women doing the work that Black Americans had done in Central
Yeah.
Asia. So they re-sculpted the narrative.
Wow, that to me was such a something that I didn't know that was so heart wrenching that and tell me a little bit about how that process happened. So essentially, it was almost erased and like it never happened, and then replaced with photos of.
Yeah, well, under Stalin, you always had, sort of trash and burn style of uh, burning everything, destroying things. And then there's a famous book called 10 Years After Uzbekistan, which is the 10-year mark of the progress of Uzbekistan. But Stalin had killed so many people at that point that they had to blot out the face of all the people he didn't like. And pretty soon the whole thing became blotted. So, this is what you have under a dictator. And so all these photos and history was destroyed. But I mean, I'm sure it's somewhere. I'm not entirely sure, but it's not a very publicly known history, and it's in Hughes's archives and other archives as well. Of course, there's a lot of writing around this um, that you see the names kind of all the contributors. There's a documentary about this as well on John Robert Roan. So there's a story of his life in Virginia. His son is Joseph Roan, and then he named his son Joseph Jr. But then because he was born in the Soviet Union, and they named him Joseph Stalin Roan, and so he has a story back in America. That's a great story. That's a documentary. So there are other pieces about this, but not it's not as known, and it would be more important to be known in Uzbekistan and Turkmenistan.
خیلی جالب است که امی ظالم که بود ستالین تمام تاریخ سیاه را فقط که فراموش کرد و از بجایش عکسای خانمای ازبکی را ماند که یعنی اینقدر زحمت که یاد زمین ها کشیده بودن هیچ نشان دادن که هیچ نبود و او بسیار سخت است تحمل کردنش واقعا. It's a hard pill to.
Uh, كيغان قرا engineer و مهندس و nima scientistlar hammasi ota kitoblardan o'chirilgan edi. Akslarni ham o'chirib yuboruvdi ki bilmasin hech kimki qora Amerikaga kelib ko'mak qildi. U paxta paxtani tijoratini tuzatgan, paxta tuzatishda tuzatgandi. O'chirib yuborgan edi o'sha vaqtda.
داره و
زدن ازبکی.
همچنان بسیار مهم است که یاد کنم که امی زمینا که بود از خاطر پخته بود تشکر که از یادم دادن. So Zora John, is there any pieces or the reason why I'd asked you not to stop share screen if there was a poem that you wanted to share with us or recite or show us, or if you just wanted to recite it off without sharing it, that's fine too. هر رقم که شما خوش هستین اگه کدام شعر لنگستون هیوز باشه که میخواستین یا یک توته لیترچرش که میخواستین امروی ما شریک بسازین بسیار خوب میشه.
خب شعر دارم but it's in the انگلیسی ترجمه شده بود. But also I don't have the poem as a visual if that's okay, but I can put it on a nice visual.
Sure.
که ببینین. Okay, this is a poem. در وقتی که لنگستون هیوز ازبکستان رفته بود ترجمه کرده بود شعرهای ازبکی با انگلیسی. بس ازبکی را هیچ نمیفهمید. یک ترنسلیتور دیگه بود ترجمه کرده. دیگه آدم ترجمه میکرد از روسی to فرانسوی. So it would be Uzbek, Russian, French, and then English. That was the translation in all of it because there's such a big distance between Turkestani languages and English in the 30s. It was all three or four translators in order to get one poem out. So,
Wow. Relay interpretation, we call that. So it's like
so
playing telephone, so things get lost.
well, I think he found the music. He did okay. He did okay in this poem. Um, Old Uzbek poem. I told her charming, you must wear on the sugar of your wrists the circles of golden bracelets, for ornaments are adornments good for beauty. And she answered me with sweet coquetry, I am afraid the web of my hands cannot stand the weight of gold. And I told her, enchantress, in the deep forest of your hair you must put ribbons of pearls, and the shining of your hair will rival the glitter of the pearls. And she answered, I'm afraid that the tender reed of my body will be bent beneath the weight of pearls. Um, uh, it's a kind of poem is that's the what is it? جواب سوال سوال جواب شعر
Mhm.
بود اما رقمی شعر است. Like, so he says, the man says one thing and then the girl responds back one other thing. So it's that style of poetry that he translated. So, and you can see here when he says you must wear on the sugar of your wrist, yani shirin qollaringa, which is shirin could be translated as sugar here. So you see the direct translation of some of the terms. I don't see too much of the others, but the reference of the pearls, the back and forth, the game of poetry is what's evident in this poem.
Beautiful. That was a beautiful piece. Thank you so much for sharing that, Zora John. Um, so, Zora John, I wanted to ask you, what were some really important lessons for you, personally or academically, that you got from this journey? Some things that you want to share with the audience. Um,
Well, I never considered my home language as something that would get me through a PhD because I was doing American literature.
mhm.
So هیچ وقت بالمودم که ازبکی کرک بلده که امریکایی literature دن PhD اوقگانه. I always used it in the kitchen, in the home. It was not really my scholarly language. And also بالمودم که قنچه مهم آتانمز به آتامز بلمش لگنه که کتاب متاب تو زدگنه. I realized how important it was to work with my dad to on projects and to have it intergenerational in that sense. So that was very powerful because he had memories and then we matched it. It's my PhD is always because of my dad because it's his knowledge, my knowledge, that we were able to bring together this story. And it was like a detective work because translating that poem, وشعر كمان تابتم yazılganı da eski Özbeki'de. So then the what I'm getting all my languages mixed up in one
It's
ball.
okay.
Well, it was written in the Perso-Arabic script, so it was something that was coded as well. So there was the letters were separate, so you can match the different separated letters. You know that the Afghanistan Uzbeki, I mean the Farsi alphabet نشتمل كناني, so the alphabet is the same. The only difference in Uzbeki alphabet is that there's a lot different kinds of alif because we have different vowel sounds. So um, what you have in the poem that we did was we were trying to connect the separated letters in order to see what secret message he was sending out. So it was coded. It was a coded poem. But I couldn't have done that without my father.
این بسیار یک چیز مهم است که همچنان برای پدر جانتان بسیار یک مقبول مناسبات خاص داشتین که تانستین که یک جای ایره ریسرچ تانه بکنین و I think that is a beautiful point because not only have you come with these accomplishments and all of this research, but also you've extended this bond and enriched it. Zorajan Paiwandi Langston Hughes, Ichi Monomita, I love this word and I wanted you to hear it from you what this means and how this correlates to Langston Hughes.
Oh, I wanted to use the concept of love through Ibn Sina, who wrote the Dari Nushtamikat Ibn Sina. نشتغل بود که there's different kinds of love, ishq for humanity, for the world. This is not, romantic, but it's more kind of divine love that as you know, divine love. I have to find the Farsi word that he used at the time, but he uses ishq as a way of living in the world. So when you make a paiwandi to other people, you unite with people around you, you connect with the people around you, you you create a bond that's really important. Hold on. There was a poem by Jalaluddin Rumi. The فارسی نشته کرده بودم بس یادم رفت. گفته بود که مولانا گفته بود که با واصل کردن به دنیا آمدیم. So this is what I think of Langston Hughes. And when he traveled, he connected and he united. Translation is a kind of love, right? So you love people, you want to translate, you want the world to understand them. So that's how I was reading Paiwandi. He makes that kind of probably more. Paiwandi is used in the theoretical text, but everyday Farsi would probably be wasal kadan and connection with people and friends, and in that way creating a community, a togetherness, and then you connect and see each other's differences and similarities, and then how you can help one another and create harmony. That's really our function.
و پیوندی also شما گفتین که divine love یعنی I don't know که اگه عشق عشق برای خدایی داری یا it's hard to I'm sure that there is a word for it and I'm gonna find
Well,
it.
it is. Well, it is ishq, but it's for humanity. It's the love that God has for us, right? So it's not necessarily personal love or romantic love. Like, it's not, it's, I guess, a kind of ashiqi. But when we have all the of poems and things from even Maulana, all the things about the lover and the beloved, it's all for God, right? So we have to think of that love when we make a paiwan, when we connect with the people around us, we actually are loving God because we love God, we love His creations. Because, yeah, so
طریقه
that's.
طریقه که وقتی که آدم میخوانه که مولانا مخصوصا وقتی که راجع به عشق گپ میزنه و شخص یک انسان نمی باشه عشق خدا می باشه عشق انسانیت می باشه عشق تمام دنیا می باشه so the
Mhm.
basis of what we live our lives for so Rajan, what were some of the challenges you know before you share your poem, what were some challenges that you faced when you were doing this project وقتی که امی پروژه را پیش می بردین چی رقم چالنجات دیدین مشکلات ها
و هنوزم دیده رئیس مشکلات یک کوشش کرده رئیسم که خلاص کنم کتابشه با دیسرتیشن خلاص شده بس کتاب با کتاب چاپ کردن یعنی دیگه رقم کتاب نشته میکنم وقت ندارم بسیار کار میکنم بسیار یک خوب چاپخانه بیافم. I mean, these are the challenges as an immigrant, right? You have to learn everything from kind of scratch and find your way through to make sure that the right publisher gets it and um, you're not working too hard, that you have time to write. I write in the early mornings after, after Fajr, you sit and you write for 3 hours and then you go to work from 9 to 5. So the challenges are mostly economic and just being a second generation immigrant. It's very, or one and a half generation immigrant. It's hard to find all the places that you need to make this happen, to make this more public. So yeah, that's been my challenge.
خیلی یگان چالنجایی که زورا جان میبینه که از خاطر که یکی اقتصادی است یکی وقت است وقت نیست و چون سر وظیفه میرن و بعد از نماز فجر اونا میشینن کتاب خود نشته میکنن و دعا میکنیم که موفق باشی. We do pray for your success and we know that you will be very successful in this
تشکر.
journey. We support you. We will be there for you. To be, I'll
تشکر.
be the first person to purchase it. زورا جان شیرتان یافتین؟ Your,
The
your,
poem, yeah, let's see. There's a poem that my father and I um, translated. There are two versions of this poem. One is the version that it's too bad I don't have the Uzbeki version. I should have read that. But شعر خودش در Uzbeki نشته کردن.
oh,
So I translated, but I don't have the original. I think my dad has read it somewhere. But I have an audio of it of my dad's. But the version that was translated is like this. So this is a version that was translated for Hughes. So a lot of my work is about finding things that didn't connect at that time period and translating and connecting and resurrecting in a sense to make that historical connection between Black American and Central Asian. So listen to me, my dear Langston. To LH on his arrival in Uzbekistan. I greet your arrival, the hero man, hey you, who came across the ocean, the lion who conquered the waves of the sea. I am bound to you as tightly as the curls of your hair, and when I saw your eyes, I loved you. Welcome, you poor son of the West. So that's a little part of the version they had translated for him, so under censorship. But the other side, when you read the 9 pages, he talks more about his struggles against the communists.
mhm.
Um, but in this version, it starts out as a very romantic Uzbek style poetry. So it sounds a lot like Çağatay şiirlerde, like Alisher Navoy Daka yazılgan şiir. So like the writings of Alisher Navoy, who was, um, Uzbek in Afghanistan. So that's an interesting connection. But that kind of style of poetry is what he wrote in. That's what we found. So this is a version I translated with my dad. Crossing many oceans you've come, leaving your family behind. I saw you and I felt wrapped in the curls of your hair. The black and white of you, a protective eye talisman, entered my poor home. When I look in your beautiful eyes, I love you. In front of your glowing face, your words came like stars, and now you must hold my words. I am powerless in the face of the Komsomol. I am hiding. And so then he goes into confessing the problems he has for use after the first level of romantic style poetry. Then he gets much more about sharing his life, kind of thing. Yeah.
It was incredibly beautiful. Thank you so much, Sura John. بسیار یک شعر زیبا و مقبول بودن و حتما زیر screen we will have at the bottom of your screen there's a comment section I will add 10 years after Uzbekistan as a recommended read. And if you have any questions or comments for Zohra, you can definitely put them there. If you have any questions for her, you can also call the number at the bottom of your screen. اگر کدام سوال داشته باشین برای زورا جان یا کدام کامنت داشته باشین در زیر سکرین نمره تلفن ما هم هسته و همچنان چت باکس است که میتونین شما سوالایتان کنین. Zora John, thank you so much. If you don't mind making me the host again.
Oh,
بسیار عکسای مقبول. It's hard for me to part from such beautiful, thank you so much, to part from such beautiful pictures and such beautiful history, something that is such a rare gem that you have discovered and that you continue to work on. Thank you so much for being with us. Before we leave and before we end, if you have any words of wisdom for the audience, anything else you'd like to share with them, um, we'd be enthralled to hear it.
ببخشید در خانه شیر شکر گپ میزنیم ازبکی و فارسی گپ میزنیم از مخاطر سعی گپ زده نتانستم ببخشیم بسیار Do I have any words of wisdom? Yes, hold on to your mother languages. They help get you through in the world. Never neglect the language.
That's shame on me because my daughters are losing the daddy. I can feel it every day, and that's a reminder first and foremost to myself to keep the language going. Han qadar lisan مادری زبان مادری مهم است که هر جای نقطه دنیا بری بازم باید است که لفظ زبان مادری خدا بفهمین. And we can do a whole show about this, about, and we're going to bring you back, John, to talk about language, the importance of it, and holding on to your roots and language as a way of connecting different generations and um, different communities and giving people that power of voice. بازم تشکر که یک قدرت خاص میخواه که آدم لسان خدا بتانه نگاه کنه. از وقتتان تشکری میکنم. افتخار ما هستی. We're so proud of you. We're honored to have you in our community. Thank you for all the important work you do for us. You are also a treasure as an Afghan American woman, a diamond in the rough for us. Thank you so much for everything that you
Thank
do.
you. So sweet.
تشکر بسیار زیاد بازم از آمدنتان از طرف صدای حق تلویزیون تشکری خاص برتان و بازم برای بینندگان در هر نقطه دنیا که باشین خوش و آرام باشین. تشکر و خداحافظ.
Oh.
John, I think that you have the permission to stop record.